Hello and welcome to Bonus Action Dash. My name is Jaren and this is Sunday D&D Prep, a show on this channel where I take you behind the scenes and show you what I do to prepare to run a session of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Specifically, I am running the published adventure Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. And folks, here we are in the very end game. Today will probably be the last episode in this campaign, and I'm excited for what's to come afterwards because we're going to get into another campaign very soon after that. Probably I'm going to give myself a little bit of a time to take a break and prepare, and then we'll jump into Spelljammer probably after the new year. But today we are in the final episode of this campaign. I've been running this for about a year and a half now, and we're preparing. This is the 57th session. We almost made it to 60, kind of like I thought we would. And this might be a shorter episode today because there's not really much left to do. It's the fight. I left the entire session for just this final fight, and there's really nothing more to prepare after this. So there's not going to be a whole long list of secrets and clues and things to prepare after this fight. It's mostly going to be talking about the 3 forms of Ordeal and how I'm planning on running this fight. As you can see, I have a ton of tabs open. There's going to be a lot to keep track of. So let's jump into it and talk about it today. So to bring us back up to speed, last time we left off, the players were still in Ithrin, and my Ithrin map is, here we are. They were still in Ithrin and talking about what was next as they had just finished the fight against Iriel Arthas and now had access to the Mythallar. This is the morning after the fight. They had kind of left that fight with emotions pretty high. Our character of Gwendrel, the Tiefling cleric of Saloon, the Twilight cleric, was feeling down because he felt like he's been kind of not really much of an asset to the party. He went down in that fight, and by the time he was brought back, the fight was almost over. That's happened in a few different fights in the past, and he's felt like maybe they'd be better off without him. He's talking about leaving, about walking away from the Sunseekers. And it was some really, really good RP in the moment. And I had to check in with the player just to make sure that, hey, are you feeling like you're still having fun? Is this just RP that's really good? And they assured me that, yes, this was great RP. It just was kind of a long time coming for this moment with this character. And so we're struggling and dealing with that. And they're now going into this final fight knowing that our ally might decide to not stick with us after this is all over. Mars is our barbarian, our tiefling barbarian, kind of talked some sense into him and referenced it as far as, I think Gwen's just being stupid is all it really is, just being stubborn. But emotions are high, and we're running back into 10 towns now with that kind of in the back of everyone's mind. They discussed as to what was next to be done now that they can attune to the Mythallar. They did return down to the bottom and all begin attuning. And I know by the book it says that it's supposed to be attunement by a caster. I kind of overlooked that and just decided anybody can attune to it because why not? It makes it more fun for everybody. I do like that this is a very spellcaster heavy campaign. At the same time, it does kind of feel like maybe it leans on that too much and there's too many really good things just for casters and not enough good things for non-casters. So I'm kind of bending the rules here a little bit, and I'm aware of that. The other thing that I recognize that I'm doing differently with this is after they attuned to the Mythallar and they could cast Control Weather. If we look at the book, Control Weather is a spell that requires you be able to see the sky. And if you can't, then you can't cast a spell. And if that ever happens in the middle of the spell being cast, it breaks the spell basically. But by the book, because this is a pretty powerful magical artifact, that's not one of the requirements that you need. So I think I agreed, and all the rest of the players at the table agreed that that's kind of a lame cop-out because technically they can just sit here beneath the glacier, cast Control Weather, and hit like half of Icewind Dale, half of 10 towns to start changing the climate. I think that's kind of a lame cop-out. So we all agreed that it's a better requirement that you have to be outside to do this. So that's kind of where we all were. They began to use the Mythallar to raise the city out of the ice. And I know this is another thing that I'm kind of maybe breaking the rules a little bit with, maybe breaking what the book says. I have read a lot of discussions about how this is supposed to work. the fact that, well, maybe some things in Ithrin aren't within the boundaries of this Mythalar being able to affect it. It says it's 500 feet in all directions. And I've seen people talk about, well, maybe the Mythalar is broken and it doesn't actually fly the city now. I like having that option, and I think this is just kind of cooler. I think that they can fly the city back there. So that's what we did. We said that they're going to start flying the city back, and it was a cool moment of being able to describe this, this massive city just essentially begin to levitate itself out of the ice. And I did something that I think is a cool sort of mechanic too, where as the city began to lift itself out, a magical barrier started to form around the city as chunks of ice began crashing down into the city below. And like a reflex, it formed this invisible barrier to protect itself. And I think that makes more sense. First of all, I don't think it's very fun to try to fly a city out of the glacier and then end up destroying the city in the process. And also, if you look at the map, most of the town, most of Ithrin, is still in pretty good shape. I know it crashed kind of going in bottom first, but if you look at the buildings, most of the debris is probably not the result of the initial crash, but the result of maybe glacier falling down on top of it afterwards. Maybe it's a result of decay over time. It's been here for almost 2,000 years. And it has this ongoing, arcane blight effect. I'm sure that there was some parts of the city destroyed by, the corruption of its citizens, as maybe some of them, perished under this arcane blight and they destroyed the town. So I kind of like this idea that there's this barrier that comes up to protect the city, and that, allows them to fly it out of the glacier. It's not exactly a comfortable ride either. They're flying out of the glacier and bits are still constantly crumbling down around this barrier, producing this loud, thunderous noise, and it's really horrifying. And then as they finally make their way out of the glacier, producing this pretty big sinkhole where the city escaped from, and they're finally back into the open air of Icewind Dale, seeing a blizzard that's a lot more nasty this time around. And they slowly navigated their way back. And we got to go back to this map finally after months of being down in Ithrin. After I think real time we were there for almost 3 months, and they were finally able to get back to this map and slowly begin to navigate back towards 10 towns. And now I think their initial idea was, we are going to try to, get our bearings, get close, and then go back to the Sea of Moving Ice, try to navigate back to the island, fight Oriel on the island. And knowing that that's not where Oriel is, knowing that I had her already come to 10 towns, I'm in the middle of the campaign, and while this is going on, I'm thinking, how can I discourage them from going there without completely railroading it? And so they first began to navigate to the Lost Spire, right? They've been there before. They have a good idea of where it is. But this time around, they can't find it, obviously. The landscape around there is much more flat, whereas before it was this undulating terrain and sometimes large mountains and hills. But Icewind Dale has been buried. Oriel's come back to 10 towns. The blizzards have increased and time has passed. Things are buried now. They can't find the Lost Spire. So they began to slowly make their way northwest, trying to get back to where Angajuk was. And I thought, here's where I can sort of demonstrate that things are a lot worse. As they're getting closer to the cities, they can see off in the horizon where they're hoping to see torchlight and maybe the light of fishermen's boats. They don't see anything. It's completely dark. They go past Kelvin's Cairn, and what is normally a couple hundred, maybe 300 feet in the sky, in the air, is maybe you see 50 to 100 feet of the top of it, the rest buried beneath snow. I wanted to give them further reason and evidence that, well, Icewind Dale is buried and you got to get back there now. They did send a message to Speaker Duvessa Shane of Bryn Shander saying, basically like, hey, we're coming back. Things are going to get better. We're going to kill the Frostmaiden, return warmth to Icewind Dale. So rally the troops, let everyone know that things are going to be great. And Duvessa Shane's like, I hope you hurry because things are really bad here. We're just trying to not be seen, basically, is what she responded with. that wasn't, they still were heading north. And so I did something that I find myself doing from time to time. And I don't know if it's completely transparent, but maybe it is an example of the players learning what the DM does. So we better follow the breadcrumbs. But not wanting to go off on a multi-session tangent where they go off to the island and either there's nothing there, or I have to completely revamp my end game combat and say that Oriel is actually there. I gave them a pretty obvious breadcrumb to not go that way. Here's what I did. As they were flying past the cairn, they got a glimpse of the night sky as the clouds began to open up. They're continually casting this control weather as well, by the way. And in this brief moment of seeing the sky with a perception check high enough, they saw a figure streaking across the night sky towards 10 towns, opposite the direction that they were going. And they decided to follow it. One person could fly, the other person could hop on a great owl. I think maybe they both hopped on the owl as summoned by the figurine of power, and followed it. And followed Oriel all the way to Targos, where they saw her atop her throne on the location where Targos should be. And they didn't see any of these other cities as well, by the way. They saw the very tops of the Lonelywood Forest. Tourmaline, nowhere to be seen. Lonelywood itself, nowhere to be seen. The lights of Bryn Shander, not seen. And they saw Oriel with her army of wolves, frost giant skeletons, and mounds of snow, sitting on an icy throne where Targos should be. And that's where they turned back around, Sarah and Jack Forrest above the owl, back towards Ithrim, that was still flying around the cairn, by the way. And they decided, here's where we need to make the stand. Oriel is here in Icewind Dale. So I don't know if that's too much of a big obvious flag from the DM to say like, hey, don't go that way, go over here. You see something that's telling you to go over there, so please go over there. I don't know if that's too obvious and railroady, or if it's something I need to kind of scale back on. I noticed that I do that from time to time, so I guess being aware of it is probably the good first step. But they parked Ithrin. It's still floating in the sky above the Dwarven Valley, and this is really kind of narratively poetic. That they don't want to park it on top of a town, so they found this big open valley basically, and I left Ithrin there, and it's narratively poetic because this was the location of the first quest of the campaign. We started off with the Foaming Mugs quest, where they tracked down some goblins that had hijacked, the wagon of iron ingots in the valley, and they encountered these, this goblin force at first and second level way back when, almost a year and a half ago. And now here they are coming back to 10 towns. They've parked this, 1,000-foot across city with this horrifying 1,200-foot tall spire in the center, just in this valley, and made their way toward the throne of Oriel. Along the way, I guess before they left either, and I forgot to mention, now they're at level 10. The defeat of Iriel Arthas was their leveling up moment, so they are now level 10. And with that, Sarah Gritz, our caster, said goodbye to an ally who has been alongside the campaign for almost the entirety of it. She's been around for a while. Esther was an NPC schoolmate of Sarah Gritz, who they both came to Icewind Dale to help the townsfolk see what was going on, find out the secrets that Ithrin had, or that Icewind Dale had in store. And Esther has seen a lot of stuff. She got taken advantage of by Dazan. She watched the former simulacrum Dazan get burned at the stake. She got, tossed into the Spire of Iriel Arthas, almost knocked unconscious. She had this weird artifact that is secretly a beacon from the Tal'Dorei setting. And also, now she's just feeling like she's over her head and wants to go home. So with that level up, Sarah cast a teleportation circle, sending her back to the college in Neverwinter. And it was a very, it was kind of a sad goodbye. She, gave Sarah a long hug, kind of turned and gave a knowing smile to Dazan. And with that, returned It's Neverwinter through the circle. And it kind of made me sad too, because I know that we have all these small moments that are like closing the door and wrapping up some trails before we end the campaign. And I've had a lot of fun running this. It's been an absolute blast. I've fallen in love with running D&D over the last year and a half through this campaign, and I'll be sad when it ends because this has been fun. And I know that these little tiny things are just, the steps we need to do before we do the last step. So yeah, that's kind of where we're picking up today. We left off with them encountering the first line of defense, which is a pack of winter wolves, a little bit of a warm-up fight. And so that's where we begin today. This is the wrong map. We are here. So I think that brings us up to speed, and there's not much left to do. I just need to talk about this last fight. Our scenes are going to be the winter wolves fight, the fight with Oriel, and then we'll talk about what happens after that. I'm planning on doing maybe like a month or two after, because it's probably going to take that long to bring seasons back and to bring everything back to normal. And then once we do we'll take a break next Sunday. No session next Sunday. It's Thanksgiving weekend here in the States. And we're going to meet back the week after. So 2 weeks from today, we'll meet back. And we'll just have a open book Q&A, players with DM. Campaign's over, and I will answer whatever they want. So I'm going to ask them to think about some of their favorite moments of the campaign. I'll ask them to just think about, like, what would your character want to do a year from now? What's going on in their life? What's their ultimate long-term story? Maybe we'll pick up with this cast of characters again with a one-shot down the road. I don't know. So that's kind of our scenes. I am using Notion, by the way, and I'm using essentially the Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master outline to prepare for this. If you're not familiar with that, go check it out at slyflourish.com, I think. Or just Google Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. It's everywhere. So let's talk about this fight. We first have the Winter Wolves fight. This is not really much of note. They're Winter Wolves. I have, I think, 4 of them on this page. Yeah, 4 Winter Wolves. Maybe it should be 3. I don't know. But I think this should be, just an okay warm-up fight. It's the first line of defense. Here we go. Right tool. Things to remind myself here is pack tactics, and also cold breath and the recharge for cold breath. Other than that, this is a fairly straightforward fight. I should go ahead and roll initiative for all these guys, because a fight of this scope, I definitely think it's beneficial to roll this stuff ahead of time. So let's just go ahead and do that. Let's check this out. They have Dex +1, so let's go ahead and roll this 4 times. I'm going to put this in this third value here on the page. Oh boy, these guys are rolling good. I already rolled for Oriel, and unfortunately, one of her forms did not roll so good. We got a 15 here. And lastly, 16. So there we go. I have all my character, all my player tokens. And in fact, while I'm thinking about it, I think I need to move these guys also over to the Oriel fight page. So let's do that as well. Copy all this over to the Oriel page. This is the messier one for sure. Wait, did I not copy all of them? Hold on. What is going on here? Is Roll20 just being weird? These are all tokens. Oh, it's because I'm not on the token page. Or the token layer. Roll20 is working fine. It's user error. There we go. Okay, so let's... Why is that colored weird? They all like that? That's strange. Why is that like that? I don't know. Let's put it over there so it doesn't look all weirdly colored. Okay. Not sure, but we're not going to worry about it. So I need to move. This is already on the correct layer. That's on the GM layer. I need to put, because I want to have these separate and ready to go. Put that on the GM layer. And token layer is good. I have Oriel layer action token as well, because I always forget to do layer actions. So let's talk about this fight. So I am using a different set of stats than the book has, because the book stats are kind of weak. I think if you watched any stream for this campaign, or watched any sort of prep, or even like looked at the stats yourself, it's pretty weak, right? Let's take a look and I'll show you. So Oriel in first form, and I understand that they have 3 forms, and all 3 forms kind of do their own thing pretty okay-ish, and together it's pretty good, right? There's there's 2 legendary resistances. She has 3 legendary actions. There's by the book, there's not really lair actions unless you're on the island and it's like, oh, you can teleport and you know where anything is, and that's kind of a lame lair action. But as written, this form is kind of neat though. Its base attack is really weak, right? It's got multi-attack twice with talons. She's a lower level god, right? And this is a +7 d8 +3. 7 points of damage from a god is really kind of a downer and embarrassing. Touch of Frost is pretty good, but you don't get to attack twice if you do that. And then she has Chromatic Orb as a ranged spell attack, +13 is really good, range 90 feet. What makes her really interesting in this form is the 60 feet of fly speed. And the reason that that's interesting is because of this, where is it? Because of Misty Step. So what she can do is basically play as like a dive bomb and then get away really quickly. She has 60 feet of fly, so you can stay about 45 feet away in the air, and on your turn, use 45 of those feet to get up to your target. Use your multi-attack, then you Misty Step infinitely, because you have at-will Misty Step and it's a cantrip, I believe. Sorry. It's not a cantrip. It's a second level spell. My bad, but this is still at will. She doesn't have spell slots. That's what I was thinking. She has at will of these 2 spells. So you get close, you Misty Step 30 feet away, and then you have 15 feet of movement remaining. So you spent 45 getting there. You use that to get your remaining 45 distance. So that's kind of the idea, I think, with this form is come in, attack, Misty Step away, and fly back away. And if you need to kind of like hang back for a second, you can just sling some Chromatic Orbs, which is, not too bad. But the thing is, it's 13 armor class. She's a god. 95 hit points. Again, she's a god. We do have legendary actions, I guess, which are okay. Touch of Frost, teleport. Those are all right. Second form also does some interesting things in the form of, actually, let's talk about the forms first, and then what one I am using. So she has more legendary resistances. What other things are interesting? Her melee attacks, again, pretty weak. +7 to hit. Does a d8 +3, and then +2 d8 cold damage. So it's like, not the best. She's a god. Again, need to keep reminding this that she's a goddess and probably should be a bit stronger than this. She does have Cone of Cold, which will be a once per short rest. In this case, once per fight. And create Ice Method 3 per day. Kind of a waste of a turn, if you ask me, to spend an entire action to create an Ice Method. It can do some neat things once you get it set up, but to spend your whole action just doing that is kind of weak. And then we have Ice Stasis, which is obviously the strongest of her powers. It's a pretty difficult. It's a 21 DC Charisma save. Now we're talking. This is good. On a failed save, the target is trapped in an ice crystal, this immovable tiny object. You can keep making saves at the end of your turn, Sorry, start of your turn. No, end of its turn. It starts damage at the start of its turn. So, trapped in this shard, if it succeeds, nothing happens. But trapped in this shard, it takes 66 cold damage at the start of its turn. It can repeat the saving throw at the end of its turn, and then it'll become free. And you can also destroy the crystal. It's a tiny object, AC 18. How does this thing have more AC than Oriel? You know, Oriel's a god. Do we need to remind you that? And also 9 hit points, immunity to all damage except for fire damage. So trapping, you know, whatever's the strongest of the party members on the opening round, that's going to be, that'll set the party, you know, that'll set the stakes, you know, set the tone for the combat. To know that their fighter that's going to burn all 6 attacks in the first opening round, whoops, just got trapped in a shard. Now, like I said, fortunately, I rolled a 1 for this Oriel's initiative. So, and then we have more legendary actions. A legendary action, make 1 weapon attack. Lame, because she's got a Morning Star and an Ice Dart, both of which are extremely weak. Or we have Ice Flurry for 2 actions, which is a weak 2d4 piercing damage to everybody. And then she can use Splinter, which is all 3 actions. It essentially replaces the Ice method's Death Burst. Instead of it exploding and being a really weak effect, this here instead is a DC 21 Dex save, and you take 3d8 piercing damage on a fail and half on a success. That's way better than the Ice method's Death Burst by itself. Then lastly, we have the third form, this icy shard, this crystal elemental shard, called Winter's Womb or Queen of Frozen Tears. We'll definitely be using those names in the session. This one I feel like is more representative of what a god should be. It's got 19 AC. It's got, you know, also she has 1 more legendary resistance. Just being in the space, this frigid aura, you take 10 cold damage just for being within 10 feet. And then she's got some pretty strong effects here too. The first thing I think what we're going to do is use Blizzard Veil. You create this magical blizzard, this 30-foot sphere, which causes the area to be heavily obscured. So effectively what that means is anybody that moves in within that 30 feet to try and attack it, it's heavily obscured, meaning you can't, you know, you have the blinded effect. You have disadvantage on your attacks to hit Oriel. But Oriel has True Sight to 120 feet, meaning she negates the blinded condition. True Sight can't out to specific range, see in normal and magical darkness, see invisible creatures, automatically detect illusions. This bypasses this effect as far as I understand. So Oriel will get advantage on all her attacks because everybody else is considered blinded. Because they are considered blinded, they have disadvantage against her. This is going to be the opening round. And then we have these polar rays. And you can also legendary action polar ray. You can use Intensify Aura and then Blinding Gleam. So Intensify Aura will deal 10 more cold damage with this frigid aura. Blinding Gleam will make creatures blinded. And I think that's kind of redundant, as it already is kind of happening with Blizzard Veil. So anyways, let's talk about what I'm using. And I mentioned this in the last episode, but I found this updated, modified, homebrewed version of Oriel on Reddit, thanks to user Warm Water Penguin on r/Rime with the Frostmaiden. And this is extremely powerful. I don't know how it's going to go, and I'm kind of terrified of it. Because it does a lot of stuff. I'm not using all of it, but I am using a good deal of it. So first of all, we've got some lair actions that are not just, you can teleport, because that's kind of boring. We've got, and I think this is based on Oriel being in Ithrin or in the Glacier or on the island. So I'm not using all of this, but our lair actions that we are using on Initiative 20, and I've already made myself a lair actions token. If you are running D&D on a Roll20 or some other, online platform, and you have lair actions, highly recommend you make something in the initiative tracker that says lair actions, because if you're like me, I forget all the time. And then it's like the third round and I go, oh, wait, we have lair actions. I completely forgot. So, what we've got here for this homebrew is Raise Walker, Raise Frost Giant Skeleton. We've got Bitter Cold and Difficult Footing. Kind of does what it says. Raise Walker, you can make a Cold Light Walker, right? You create this blizzard in a 5-foot radius sphere. If you end your turn there, you take cold damage, and then on initiative 10, it creates a Cold Light Walker. We've got Raised Frost Giant Skeleton, where the ground caves in and a Frost Giant Skeleton pulls itself out of the ice. Initiative count 0, Frost Giant Skeleton with initiative 0 emerges, and then just adds to the fight. So I think we're going to use both of those. I had an idea to start the combat with 1 or 2 of these already in, but I think that would be way too strong of an opening first form fight. So I think we're going to run this like it says. Give her a chance to summon one that can enter the battle later. And then we've got Bitter Cold, where everybody just takes damage. Maybe we'll remove that one. Yeah, I think we're going to remove that one probably. And then Difficult Footing, make a dex save, and if you fail, you fall prone. So decent lair actions. Those are pretty on brand for how lair actions usually go. Modifications to Oriel. Obviously giving her tougher stats. She needs to have more hit points. By the book, she's got 95. We're giving her 150. Also giving her +2 AC while airborne. Getting rid of some of the vulnerabilities and resistances. We are replacing regular attack in multi-attack with Touch of Frost. So instead of doing, 2 Talon Strikes for +7 to hit and a D8 +3 damage, which is super lame, we're using Touch of Frost, which is a +13 to hit, a 3d8 cold damage, and you can't take reactions. Way cooler. We also have, this is a bit of a strategy as to how, this all here in point number 3 is all as written by the book. So this isn't really, I already talked about this. I think, I don't know about this one. This is an optional one. I don't know that I'm going to do this. This point here says that, on 50% damage, Oriel summons a copy on the ground, ends the current player's turn. This copy acts immediately and becomes a simulacrum's placed in the turn order identical to Oriel, but cannot fly. And I think this is probably a bit too strong, so I'm not going to use this one most likely. But maybe we'll do something kind of in that vein where at 50% health, she is now on the ground and the turn ends right there, because that's kind of a theme of these 3 forms in this homebrew is the turn ends immediately at 50% health. So maybe we'll do that. And then this gives her, an optional regen if you need to kind of like prolong the fight, which says basically if she didn't take fire damage, she regains 20 health at her turn. And, that's on brand for Oriel. That would make sense. Form number 2. Again, form number 2 only has an AC of 16 and 136 hit points. I think the AC stays the same, but we're buffing her again. 200 health, no vulnerability or resistances to weird weapons. I think in this form, I had an idea, and maybe I'll actually use this. One thing that I dislike about enemies that have resistance to non-magical damage is how like on or off it is. And at level 10, pretty much everyone has magical weapons. So saying like an end boss has resistance to non-magical weapons might as well not even be there because everybody has magical weapons. One idea that I had was to make this work more like a construct where there's like a damage threshold where it's like, unless you deal 20 damage in your hit, she has resistance to that damage. And, so like if you deal 18 points of damage, it's actually 9 points of damage. If you deal 22 points of damage, then it's 22 points of damage. And, so I think maybe I'll give that a try. And if I need to modify that, I can. So let me go into my notes here. This should be, I need to go to the page, I've bookmarked everything, so it's going to be easier to use all this extra stuff. Yeah, let's try that. So I said damage threshold 20 and 20 and resistance at 19 and under. The thing that we are not doing here, what else are we doing? So yeah, create method. This is now an automatic start at the start of the turn. This is way cooler. You don't have to spend your entire action just to make a little, you know, CR 1/4 creature. So we're gonna create ice methods every turn, and no longer limited to 3 per day. Splinter uses 2 legendary actions, and she gets 4 legendary actions in this form. And you can also chain Splinter. So if Splinter kills an ice method, it triggers another Splinter, and I think that's super cool. What else? I don't think I'm using this. This is a bit too strong. And I am using this, I think, but I'm not going to re-give her Ice Stasis and Cone of Cold and Legendary Resistance. I think I'm just going to create her Ice Methods. I like this theme of immediately ending the turn at 50% health. That's really cool. And yeah, on brand for a god. So let's do that. Let me modify my notes here. End current player's turn. And I'm going to... I'll put a strike through just in case I want to actually use it. The other thing that we're giving her is counterspell and shield 3 times per day. Because God should. God should have that, right? And shield in this form is really neat. And it makes sense. She is this crystalline, icy woman form. They have seen the first 2 forms already. They don't know a 3rd form exists. So I'm curious to see how they're going to approach this fight. That is form number 2. What else did we have here? Did I miss something? I feel like I'm missing something. No, I think that's it. We covered the legendary actions when we first just... None of this changes, by the way. This is all standard. This is all staying the same. It's just we're kind of moving some things around and saying that ice methods just get made. And lastly, in the 3rd form, we are buffing her once again, giving her 200 hit points. 19 AC is perfectly fine. And we can really take advantage of the remaining ice methods. So ice methods, when you summon them, they go immediately after Oriel in the turn order. And legendary actions happen at the end of another thing's turn. So what we can do is we can kind of chain these polar rays together. And on our turn, we use polar ray twice. Any remaining methods go immediately after Oriel. Oriel can use legendary actions at the end of that method's turn and use another polar ray. So she can get these long chain of attacks in before the players get to go. That's going to be a bit nutty, but it's the final fight, so we'll see. I mentioned this part already with Heavily Obscured and with the Blizzard Veil. It's going to be pretty tough. She's got 19 AC. All of her attacks have advantage. Anything against her has disadvantage once she casts Blizzard Veil. That's probably going to be the opening round. Because it's not really going to waste... It's not going to waste her actions, right? Because she has 3 legendary actions and she's going to get to do stuff. What else do we have? I think that's it. At 50% health. Are we doing this one as well? I don't remember. I took a bunch of notes last time. We are. So she at 50% health. Current player's turn ends. Oriel lets out a piercing scream from this shard. DC 20 intelligence save, and on a success, you take half your current remaining hit points as damage. On fail, your max HP is cut in half for 24 hours. Terrifying. Terrifying stuff. And she has 1 more legendary resistance. And these legendary actions, which I already covered. I think, and then this one I'm going to save in the pocket. If everyone's still looking good, we're going to use it. If they're like right on the cusp of dying, probably not. But this idea that as Oriel's 3rd and final physical form shatters, it erupts and you have to make a series of saves to see if you save from being knocked prone from the blast wave, see if you can survive the blinding light of this divine spark, see if you can survive taking this piercing shattering of this crystal. A bunch of these effects could be really kind of cool to describe in slow motion as you're blasted away. We'll see. And then we've got the post game of what happens afterwards. Now, there is one thing I also need to mention too, is after last session, one of my players messaged me separately and said, "Hey, I have a cool idea. Is there any way that we could do this?" This was the player playing Jack Forrest. He's an Econite fighter and also is a Warforged, and currently has the Professor Orb, Professor Scant, still in his body. Valin's long since passed, and now the orb belongs to him. And he asked me, is there a way that that Jack could have planned and organized with Professor Scant to have some sort of emergency red button self-destruct effect, just in case the fight's going real bad, Jack can sacrifice himself? And I thought, I love that. That's super cool. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you. And what I came up with was effectively a 2-turn sequence. One where you take a bonus action to initiate the sequence, and then immediately at the start of your next turn, it goes off. When the self-destruct sequence goes off, it destroys Jack and Scant, obviously, and then it deals your full HP in a blast radius, and then kind of half or something after that. I don't remember exactly what I said, but that's basically the gist of it. I think we said piercing damage as the body is going to explode. So that's a cool in the pocket effect, and the player was really excited and happy about it. So I'm excited to see if that's actually how it goes down. But that's the Aureel fight, and man, players could fall here. There are some things that they still have at their disposal that they haven't quite used yet. I think we have 2 diamonds in case anybody actually dies. But again, that's not going to be I don't think you can cast Resurrect in the middle of a fight. I don't think that's exactly how that spell works. Gwendril, our tiefling cleric of Saloon, has a gift that he got directly from his patron, directly from Saloon. It is this glowing orb that looks like the full moon and is now used up one of the charges. It can't get recharged. It started with 3, now it's down to 2. But it lets him cause a reroll after seeing the result. I wanted to give him something really cool that he could have in the back pocket, and I don't know if that's broken. It's just cool, I think. So if Aureel succeeds on a save, he can force her to reroll after seeing the fact that she saved. Now, she does have legendary resistances, so that they'll kind of have to burn those first, but it's something in the pocket. And then Jack's got his self-destruct. There also is going to be a small chance that some allies are able to join in the fight. I've thought about this, and Captain Arlagath of East Haven might make an appearance. She could probably, help out firing a bow from a distance if things go real rough. There is Ravison still, who they have, they saved her a long time ago. She tried to kill the party. But there was reason for it. She was hurt by what Tenhounds had done. She wanted to get revenge, and then the Sunseekers came in and changed her mind and saved her and said, "Hey, we can help you." And she's been an ally of the Sunseekers ever since. She might show up and say, "Hey, Aureel, you gave me these powers to destroy things. I would rather not destroy. I'm going to use this for something better." And maybe she'll take her revenge on Aureel. But she can't really do a whole lot, is the thing. Since her powers come from Aureel, a lot of her stuff is cold-based. And, Aureel being the goddess of cold, probably not going to work. But she could, I don't know, maybe transform into a beast and get a couple of small hits in. Those are just some ideas. And then they have contacted Duvessa Shane, Speaker Duvessa Shane, who, I don't know, maybe if things go real dire, we might have some of the Bryn Shander militia able to show up. I don't know. But that's sort of it. And then lastly, I wanted to give a special mention because I was looking for music for this campaign, music for this, especially this final fight. And what I do a lot in my downtime is, especially when I'm just out during the day, I am patrolling on Spotify for good D&D music. And I happened to come across someone's playlist that had a track that just really hit me in the right way, that felt like a very awesome post-campaign theme, I suppose. So for what happens after Auril is defeated, after Warmth and Sun slowly starts to return. And I found this track on this album called So Let Us Melt. Turns out I did some looking up before. This is a game, and this track comes from the soundtrack to this game. The track that I'm using off of this is called Counting the Atmospheres. Really, really cool track. Encourage you to go check this out. This is jessicacurry.co.uk. I guess it's a UK-based composer, but super, super good album. And this track is really good. So, and I did purchase the album. I went on to, got it on Amazon, purchased the album because I needed to get the files pretty quickly for today's game. But letting you know, on the 1 in a million chance that composer Jessica Curry sees this, thank you for making awesome music. I encourage anybody else watching this to go check this album out for your games. It's fantastic. Please go pay this artist money because it's really, really good. Anyways, I don't often play my music on here because, you know, copyright and stuff, but that's what I'm going to use for the post game. And I also have music that I got from Mab Music. I don't know the actual name of the album, but I found this on Reddit as well, and you can get the album, do some searching. I'm using some of that music as well. That's kind of it. We'll take a break after this, come back in 2 weeks with the party to talk Q&A. I think my last video recording for this campaign specifically will probably be a bit of a longer one, and it's going to be a review, start to back and as a whole, for Rime of the Frostmaiden. Talk about what I liked, what I would change, what I didn't like, and maybe some recommendations if you're planning on running it. How to prepare for it, what to look for, what to maybe change, what third-party resources I used and really liked, what third-party resources I used and or that I purchased and didn't end up using so much, but they're still really good. Maybe you want to check them out. That will be incoming. I don't know when, because next week is Thanksgiving and I'll be leaving out of town in like 3 days. I don't know, but thank you all for sticking with it so far. Again, we'll be back shortly after the first of the year to talk about the next campaign, Spelljammer. Very excited for that. I'm going to be running the Academy and Light of Xerxes. We'll have a lot of fun, a lot of stuff to talk about, and you get to see preparation for a campaign from the very beginning instead of me picking it up at the 44th session of the campaign. So that's going to do it for now. Thank you for sticking around. See you next time, and have a good one.